We are now live. Good afternoon and welcome to Synopsis ARCAthens Virtual Residency 6. We are going to give you 1 minute to connect and settle in comfortably, as we are going to spend approximately 1 hour or 1 hour and a half together. While we admit our guests, please tell us in the chat from where you're tuning in. And if you happen to be an artist, please tell us what is your medium. Thank you. Don't be shy. It always takes some time. So I have to say that I'm currently in Athens. It's really, really hot, and I'm really excited about this conversation. I think it would be a really unique day. So I'll give you a few seconds. You can also go have a glass of water, find a comfortable sitting. If you're tuning in right now, please mute yourselves. You'll have the opportunity to speak with the guests later. And Tasha is in the Bronx, usually in the Bronx, but now she's in Brooklyn. Okay. I'll stop sharing the icebreaker with you, and we'll get to it. It's really nice to see all your faces. So welcome to Synopsis AVR6 for those of you who are tuning in right now. My name is Aderemi. See here, I'm an independent curator and previous AVR fellow. My skin is white, my hair is curly and brown, so is my eyes, and I wear a red dress with flowers. I will facilitate today's conversation. And I'm happy to be here with Aristides Logothetis, who is the director of ARCAthens, and the fellows, Vickles, and the artists Adeola, Naomi, Aderemi, and Tasha Dougé. And as always, Paola Kamba, executive assistant and communication manager, who kindly agreed to support us today. Before we begin, I would like to share with you a few housekeeping notes. So this program is recorded and will be available on the ARCAthens website very soon. We encourage you to keep your camera on and acknowledge the presence of other people in this virtual space. Nevertheless, if you don't feel comfortable, please turn off your camera. I'm sorry. Please mute yourselves if you don't speak. You can activate the closed caption by clicking on the CC button. This is at the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom application. You can leave your comments on Zoom chat. Myself and Paola will get back to you shortly. And you can type your questions in the Zoom chat box, and we will address these questions, or as many as we can at least, during the Q&A at the end of the program. At this point, you can unmute yourselves, or we will read your questions, whatever feels good. And if you decide to unmute, please remember to start with your name and pronouns and be mindful of the time. Since we're trying to keep this space safe, please be respectful, kind, and cordial to each other. And at the end of the meeting, we will post a survey about the quality of the program. Please tell us what you think. Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to Aristides.
Thank you, Eleni. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on this August Sunday for our 6th Synopsis, the culminating event of the ARCAthens Virtual Residency, a program we started in 2020 as a response to the pandemic and social distancing, and also as an effort for ARCAthens to expand our digital support of artists, curators, and scholars beyond the physical residencies. The concept of the AVR is for ARCAthens to nominate a curator, Vickles in this case, and the curator then researches and selects 2 artists, one in Greece and the other in the Bronx. They then engage in a visual conversation, taking over the ARCAthens Instagram account and taking turns posting images of their work daily, creating a visual and narrative dialogue, expressing their concerns during this moment in time. The curator caps the week with an Instagram live curatorial reflection. I'm so excited to introduce you to the curator, Vickles, who is Afro-Greek American, born and raised in Denver, Colorado. She currently lives and works in Miami, Florida, and is the Director of Education at the Perez Art Museum, Miami, and administers programs at the museum that directly serve over 100,000 youth and adults annually. Marie has organized arts educational programs, workshops, and exhibitions across the United States and the Caribbean for over 15 years. She's currently the curator in residence at the Little Haiti Cultural Complex and maintains an active practice as an independent curator, producing over 30 exhibitions and curatorial projects. Her curatorial work includes the co-curation of the Prism Art Fair in Miami, Visionary Aponte, Art and Black Freedom at Little Haiti Cultural Center in Miami, Walls Turned Sideways or Bridges, Narratives of Resistance at Florida Agricultural Mechanical University in Tallahassee, and Dust Specks on the Sea, Little Haiti Cultural Complex, Miami, and the San Francisco Art Institute. In her work as an arts educator and cultural practitioner, Marie is concerned with the relationship between creativity and community engagement, with the goal of supporting equity, sustainability, and access for all through the arts. Marie will be moderating this presentation, so without any further ado, Marie Vickles.
Thanks, Aristides. Thank you, Eleni and Paola and everyone on the ARCAthens team. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I know my fellow fellows were excited to get into this chat and talk today, this conversation. So let me go ahead and introduce both of them briefly. If you didn't get a chance to read their bios, which are completely shared on the ARCAthens website, I encourage you to do so, but just for the sake of this moment, I will give a short intro for each of them, just so we kind of set the tone. So Tasha Dougé is a Bronx-based Haitian-infused artist, artivist, and cultural vigilante. Her body of work activates conversations around women, advocacy, sex, education, societal norms, identity, and Black pride. Through conceptual art, teaching, and performance, Tasha devotedly strives to evoke empowerment for women and illuminate the contributions of Black people, declaring that her voice is the first tool within her art arsenal. Adeola Naomi Aderemi is a Nigerian Greek raised in Nigeria, and Greece, and is currently living between West Africa and Western Europe. She is the director and filmmaker of the 2022 film, I Am Afro-Greek, Black Portraiture in Greece. She is a multilingual, multi-local, and multi-format creative, scholar, policy analyst, and healer. Her work and activism focuses on the intersection of social justice, health, Black feminism, class, and race. She is a passionate advocate on issues concerning gender-based violence, human trafficking, gender equality, women's health, and equal representation for the voices of women of African descent in the media. So this is just a small peek into the work and practice of these amazing fellows that I had a chance to spend a residency with virtually over the last month. So let's get into it, shall we? I'm going to start sharing my screen. Bear with me a moment so I can pull that up. One second, y'all. You'd think we'd be quicker, right? We've been Zooming for like 2 years, but no. All right. Okay, here we go. I hope everyone can see it. If you can't, shout it out in the chat. All right, so to begin, we wanted to start today's presentation just touching base on the themes that we had selected over the course of this last month. Collectively, Tasha, Adeola, and I, we met every week. We talked about the different themes we wanted to explore in the Instagram posts that both Tasha and Adeola posted daily. And, you know, between chatting on WhatsApp and texting and emails, every week we kind of like evolved into different, the themes just evolved in a very, we can say, organic way, like truly. So the first theme was where we meet. We thought about the coming together of the three of us from different places, but also a lot of connection and overlap. That brought us into the next theme of the circle, and really thinking about like how we have created the lives, the practices that we are currently engaged with the support, with the history of our ancestors, of so many that have gone before us to lay foundations for what we all do now. The following week, week 3, was the title or the theme of Bridge, which was really actually a sweet moment because it also connects so beautifully with what ARCAthens is about. You know, bridging cultures, bridging communities, bridging artists, and making connections. And we talked a lot about why we need the bridges and also what's under the bridge, you know, that we're trying to get over. And then the final theme was gathering and sharing. So almost like in some ways, many of these themes are so closely connected. Like gathering and sharing to me was so closely connected to circle as well. But everything that we have created, and then how do we share these spaces? How do we create more spaces for others? So these were some of the themes that we highlighted. And then of course, within that, there was so much more. So Tasha, Adeola, please join this conversation. Let's get started.
Yes, thank you so much for having us, Marie. And yeah, let's get started. I guess we wanted to present what we did for the past months in a circular kind of hierarchy, like not a question answer between, which is what normally happen, right? A question and answer between the curator and the artist. And we wanted to connect with the curator herself. Like Marie was part of the residency kind of synopsis every week we have posted. And I think me and Tasha agreed that it will really be beautiful to have a three-way conversation. So we get to hear Marie's perspective about the different topics that we touched on, but also just to share, because it felt like I would let Marie go, but it felt like there was a specific type of connectivity between the three of us that felt very open, felt very unfiltered, but also felt very necessary. Like a kind of a political archiving of three Black women that will look like they come from different parts of the world, geographically speaking, but there's a lot of connectivity and overlap in our cultures, our identities, and the beingness of us as people within being artists and also just within the art space itself.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly in that even with our very first theme, where we meet, and I'm looking at the image in the center, this beautiful Black woman with this gold crown adornments and this, you know, this collar, but yet there's this feather that speaks to some type of fragility, some type of softness. And this is a photograph from Adeola. So, you know, even prior to seeing Adeola's work, being encouraged to see each other in their own work as an introduction to this process. It's real easy to talk about our own stuff, but like the charge to see ourselves in each other's work was very powerful for me specifically, especially when we're talking about dominance and things like that, and fragility and softness. So I think in engaging in that type of way really broke all the bridges and all the walls down really early. So that was really exciting to engage.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the connections that we made during this residency were, I was surprised by how strong like the connections were, considering it's a virtual residency, right? It's like, I wasn't sure how this would work. You know, it's like, I always thought of residencies as something you have to do in person. You have to be in a space, a designated space, right? But our designated space, even though it was virtual, became very, very powerful and moving. And I, you know, like throughout the week, it's like these thoughts of what was being posted and responding to them, reading them, thinking about you know, all these different ideas was so just inspiring and really helped me personally to like think more about my curatorial practice and also just the practice of life, right? Living life as a human. Yeah, and in this first slide here, I put this image on here, art at a time like this. And I believe this original post was, hold on, let me just reference it here. So this original post was done by Tasha, and it really speaks to kind of like, for me, the entire residency experience and just like what it means to be a creative person right now, right? Like we are making art at a hellacious time. I mean, maybe every human always feels like their time is the most hellacious, but I'm feeling it right now. So in this current moment, you know, what does that mean for better or worse? And yeah, I really think like this residency like helped us to like think about these things and like work through that in different ways.
What would you say was the selection process of the artist, Marie? Like how did you come about that?
Oh yes, thank you. Thanks for reminding me to like, yeah. So yeah, so okay, so it was a very interesting process. There was a lot of what do they say? Is it synergy or when things align in like ways you're not expecting? Mm-hmm. So I mean, just coming across your work, for example, I was like thinking, you know, as a person that's Afro, Greek, American, I haven't always been able to make that connection with like Black people in Greece. I remember when I went to Greece when I was 17, sitting on the train and people speaking Greek around me, even sometimes about me, and I understand Greek. I don't really speak it that well. So you might hear some chopped up words at the end of this presentation. Maybe you'll get that treat. But I remember hearing people speaking around me, they're not assuming I speak Greek. And I'm just wondering like, wow, what, you know, like, what does it mean to be a Black person in Greece, right? It's like, there's some things that are similar about that in the United States, but you know, there's also more distance in certain ways. For me as like an American that doesn't speak the language and a Black person. And now like 20 some years later, I was thinking about that and I was like, there's Black people in Greece. Where are they? So I started researching artists and your work came up and I was like, wow, this is amazing. It just like blew my mind. I was like, I froze, like, what? This is amazing. And so, because finding an artist in Greece was for me the more challenging part. Like, I'm in the United States. I know artists in New York. I go to New York quite often. When I heard the Bronx, I was like, oh, I already know Tasha Dougé of the Bronx. You know, like that for me was like easy. I knew it was going to be Tasha as long as she was available, right? That was my most nervous thing. And then it was so funny. I was talking to Tasha about this. I was like, you know, like, are you interested? Do you have the time? Are you able to do this? And she's like, yeah. And then she asked me, well, who are you thinking about for the Athens-based artists? And I was like, well, I'm trying to, you know, research and find some artists out there. And she's like, what about this artist? And she sent me the link for Adeola. And I was like, I was like, okay, this is so weird. I was like, yes, she's the one I've been thinking about. And then, you know, like, yeah, it was wild. But of course, there was a process too before that. I am cutting out a lot of stuff. So I spoke with Eleni, I spoke with Aristides, like they gave me lists. I talked to different people. It was like, but Adeola's name kept coming up. And Tasha's name also came up when I mentioned it because there were also interesting New York connections there too. So it was just beautiful. Like from that, I got chills in the beginning. I was like, all right, this is how it's supposed to be. However, there was a moment where I was like, uh-oh, after the selection is like almost complete, I'm like, I'm gonna submit it. This is the final one. And I was like, is this too Black? You know, the thought crossed my mind. I was like, I don't know if is this okay? Is this gonna be weird? Is Aristides gonna be like, you know, like, I didn't know where it was gonna go. And just the fact that I had that thought for me, it's like, wow, I can't believe I'm actually thinking like that. but it's real. It's a real thing. And it truly like made me pause and think about like, how will my curatorial choices be judged, right? Like, and why should that matter? And then we talked about it as a group. Adeola, Tasha, I brought that up later on, like, you know, we're in the residency at this point, and I mentioned this fact, like, that I had paused and felt like kind of like uncomfortable. Like, is this going to be too Black, this residency? And Adeola shared something so funny. She was speaking with one of her colleagues in Athens, and he told her, he's like, because she asked him the same question for another reason. He's like, I never think that. I just go for it. We're like, may we all be so bold, right? May we all not hesitate. So yeah, that's that story. Thanks, Adeola, for reminding me to speak on that.
I want to jump back into that too. One, grateful that you were acknowledging the things that are coming up for you, because some people will like have it come up and suppress it even without engaging with the other people involved. But I remember you spoke to me about it even before we started, and I was like, there's no such thing as too Black. Like, it's a non-negotiable, you know what I mean? Because if that keeps coming up, what that ends up happening, it keeps more Black people out of these spaces, right? If people start questioning whether it's, no, we here, we're gonna show up. And I think that's one of the other reasons why I can only speak for our virtual residency, Adeola and Marie. That's what made it so powerful. Speaking specifically to me, is like, you can see that threading through consistently throughout our work, in the conversations about Sankofa, in the conversations about legacy, like who is with us, our spirituality. Like, some people don't think of art as a spiritual practice, but that was something that was evoked for us very clearly. Like, when I'm making, that's a form of prayer. You know what I'm saying? It's a non-negotiable. Like, this is an offering that I give. And so these were like, we created our own bridge, not just from a geographic viewpoint, but in this time, I never would have thought that I would be connecting with someone in Greece, right? So the possibility of the space expanding through a virtual capacity allowed for that bridge to be formed, right? So when we're also talking about art at a time like this, it's also about the infinite possibilities and what we choose to create beyond the confines of physical space. You know, we're taking over virtual space and metaphysical space. So.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. I feel like I want to ask Tasha, how do you know of my work?
So, you know, what happens is like, when someone pokes something at me, I just like, these are my Google fingers. It's like, well, now you Ecosia, which is a search engine that plants trees, because Google don't plant no trees. So, hold on, people on motorcycles. But yeah, I was search, and you know, just thinking about my experiences in Europe. I've only been to Europe very few times. The first time was Germany, when I was exhibiting there, and I had the beautiful pleasure of meeting an artist, curator, scholar, professor by the name of Natasha Kelly. And she was talking to me about the Afro-German experience. And I was like, what? You know, and then coming across learning about, I mean, if you don't stop with this bicycle, sir, but just learning about people who've had or who've talked about their Afro-German experience, and that's still something that people are vying for, you know, this identity within this context. And I was just like, well, who else is having this conversation within this party over here? I tell you, park is alive, y'all. Just wanted to be outside. But I said, is that a conversation that's also happening in Greece, right? And so, because we are a diasporic people, so I was just got to searching, and you literally just, whoop, I am Afro-Greek. And what I loved about the title is just like, it was an affirmation, it was a proclamation, right? It wasn't maybe Afro-Greek, I'm questioning Afro-Greek. You were like, no, I am Afro-Greek. And that just spoke to my soul. And I was like, Marie, so this is who I found. Because there was nothing subtle about your offering, you know what I mean? And it really champions this visibility. And so that's something that I imbue in my own practice, you know, as people, as much visibility you see here, Black people, there's still an invisibility that shrouds our humanity. And so I just felt that that was very much prominent in your work. And I was just like, Mary, what about Adeola?
Yeah, such a beautiful moment. It was like the circle had already formed before we knew. Yep. Okay, so if I may transition us to kind of like the next idea of theme, while I can toggle between the images that we have on the next two slides. We can go back and forth. The first group of images are works from Tasha's practice, but they were posted by Tasha or Adeola. And then the next set of 3 images, also the same post by Adeola, and Tasha focused on Adeola's practice. So the next week after we gathered, the beginning of this journey where we meet was then followed by this idea of circle and looking forward to go back, Sankofa. And Adeola brought some really beautiful knowledge to that conversation and shared some really great experiences that she had in regards to that, as did Tasha. So I'd love to open it up to that conversation. And if, you know, whichever slides you want me to go back and forth between, just holla. Whoever wants to start.
I'll go briefly because I want to ask you, Marie, what made you choose the image with me and the flag? And so I can briefly just talk about, you know, I had this cyclical moment because never did I ever think, as someone who used to do flag corps, I used to like march in the parades down Fifth Avenue and all these other things. Never did I ever think that would be something that I could incorporate into my own legacy work, into my own artistic practice. Especially at that time, being an artist wasn't even on the tip of my tongue. Wasn't even like something that I knew I would be later situated and anchored in. So to have this moment while I'm working on a conversation between land liberation and freedom fighting, all tied to the Haitian Revolution, you know, I remember listening to the national anthem in Creole, and it was just like, wow, flag corps. This is a practice that's rooted in military, and you know, the Haitian Revolution was a tactical, strategic, you know, military effort, guerrilla style as well. So what would it mean to bring something that brings the whip and the strength of the wind and the color of the flag and the symbols of that into that conversation? So like, I know why it meant circle to me, but I'm curious to know why you chose this photo out of all that was offered.
So for me, this brings together like so many elements that represent what you do as an artist. So starting from that point, it's like, it has, you know, the background of place. This is in the Bronx or New York?
I was actually in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, even better. So nothing, you know, let's keep all things equal. All the boroughs are great. Let's not start that here. So again, all the boroughs are great. So you're in New York City, and you know, this, to me, it's a nod to all the parts that make you who you are. From the image of Haiti on your sweater with the words home on it, to the experience of, you know, you're not just waking up and just getting out there with these skills. Like, you obviously have learned how to do this in a very specific way. So this video also shows like, okay, there's some history and learning that happened prior to Tasha making this video. Like, what's that story? How did you learn how to do this, the flag? Sorry, say it for me again. It's a
flag corps.
the flag corps. So how do you learn, you know, like you don't just wake up, it's a practice. You have to really put effort and time into learning how to do that. You could hurt yourself if you just run out there with the flag on a pole and try to start swinging that thing around. Like, don't try this at home. You know, it's just how it brought together all the elements of who you are as an artist, as a person. For me, it was such a powerful performance piece. It also made me curious, like, I'm not sure what time of the day it was shot, but I feel like maybe early morning, and just thinking about like, or whenever it was, like, to get out there, put yourself out there, to do something that is probably looks unusual to most people, whatever time of day it's happening. They're like, what's going on here? You know, it was a very powerful work that also kind of encapsulates what we're doing here. It's like, we are putting ourselves out there. We are making a statement. We are drawing from our past histories, experiences, and sharing that. So for me, this was a piece that's posted on the Instagram that you can watch the video. This is just a still from it. I recommend watching it. It's beautiful. And it summarized kind of like what we're all working through, like a process of sharing, of understanding. I really enjoy it, and I really enjoy this work, keeping it simple.
Yeah, it was very powerful to see, because I selected, for example, the first picture, which is an image from Tasha, right? And for me, it was seeing a flag. Normally when we see flag, there is an assumption, there is a reaction, there is a thinking that comes to us about belonging, about home, about nationality, about citizenship, about who we are in the world and where we're not allowed to be. And I think that seeing how, for example, I think that flag is the American flag, but it's made in such a way that it alludes to so many things. And then seeing the video of Tasha with the Asian flag and having the Asian map. Yes, map. I lost my English in a minute. Having the Asian map and having home on it. And I always think, like, in my practice, and I think in Tasha's practice, one thing we kind of have in common is the notion of being diasporic and also always being between homes. Home is always where we make home. Home can be our body today. Home can be today for Tasha. Why am I calling you Tasha? Can be for Tasha today. Brooklyn, no borough fights. But I wanted to ask, like, when we started, there was a comment I think I made about how freeing it was to be able to have this conversation on a more introspective level, but also feeling like it's okay to have conversation about belonging and being as artists. And I feel like sometimes when we talk about belonging as artists, it becomes very political. I personally believe art is political, but that's not how the arts world sees art as political or is welcome to be political. So when I think about, I guess my question now is for Marie, when you think about the selections that we've made in that week, the way you kind of summarize them, do they also make you feel like home? Because for me, when you told me you were Afro-Greek American, I was like, I'm gonna say yes to this. Like, I have not met a person who is Afro-Greek American. Like, that's three of different things connected, right? And it just felt like I feel seen in my fluidity of being and identity, but I also feel like our work would align because of that identity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like being everywhere and nowhere. It's almost like that strange in-between space. And there's some beauty in that, you know. I think that's like when you're immigrant, there's always that feeling like you're home, but you're not really home. You know, when you are sharing different identities within one person, you know, like you switch in between like all these different experiences. And sometimes it feels really great and exciting. And other times it feels terrible. It's like, I don't even have a place to really call home. But I don't know. There's something also, I think the most beautiful part of that, though, that experience of being a multi-hyphenated, multi-layered person, is that there is something really special about the connection I think you have to a human experience, right? You truly are forced into a place where you have to understand yourself as human first, right? And that understanding is so powerful. And I think like that's been talked about in different ways in the past, with when we think about like double consciousness, right? For Black folks, it's like this awareness of like in certain spaces you are somebody else, you know, in how you're received, or being able to see both sides of things. The person you're talking to, trying to understand what they might be perceiving you as, and understanding who you are. In a way, it's almost like to call it a triple consciousness, because there's like the reality of the space, the other, and then yourself. So yeah, this residency was a really great way for us to explore those layers in many ways, you know, as people that are transcontinental, all, you know, living in different continents. So representing different cultures, living in different cultures that we've adopted as our own. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that also that reminded me of the conversation we had then during this entire thing when I talked about, because when I chose the first picture, I talked about citizenship, nationality, belonging. And Tasha, who is Asian, was talking about the role of Greece and Haiti, the relationship between Greece and Haiti, which is something I personally would like have never expected to talk to with another artist. Like from a policy perspective, I have this knowledge, but meeting an artist that is from Haiti and talking about, oh, yes, Haiti was very much instrumental to the liberation of many, many nations, but also to the liberation of the modern Greek states, right? And whenever we think about Greece as a European country, we do kind of forget the liberation journey of Greece as a new nation, because we connect it automatically to ancient Greek. And we forget that there has been a difficult moment of occupation in Greek's history, and there had to be a kind of emancipation from the Ottoman Empire, emancipation from dictatorship, that Greece survived because of collaboration from other countries, because of support from nations like Haiti, right? And thinking about Haiti, like as someone of African descent who also moved between two nationality of being Greek Nigerian, Haiti is instrumental to the liberation of African nations. So Haiti's just been that girl for a while.
Yeah.
I mean,
about it.
You know, it's like even in learning about that, like there's still so much about Haiti that is left outside of the hands of everyday people, right? And that's intentional. You know, it's one thing to mark Haiti as a Black independent nation and a liberator for other Black people, right? But it's another thing to establish Haiti as a liberator for humanity, period, across the board. And so in finding that, Haiti was an inspiration to also Greeks, so much so that the president at the time reached out to the Haitian leadership and be like, yo, what y'all did was bomb.com. Can y'all help us out? What's beautiful about that narrative is that Haiti was in financial restraint. Like, we can't even give you $1, but an acknowledgement and the sharing of information and an acknowledgement of your independence, Haiti being the first to recognize Greek's independence, is support beyond finances, right? When we talk about liberation, people just think like, how can you help me financially? How can you help me with weaponry and all of other kinds of things? But we can support our liberation efforts through other means. And that feels very expansive. And so to know that Haiti is a model of that as well, only further enhances my pride as a Haitian American. And the Haitian American part is always complicated, as Marie talks about being hyphenated. What does it mean to be hyphenated in a place that has a contentious relationship with your home? right? For me, Haiti is home, even though I was born here. And so to have that relationship as I work with policy and things here, I know it has a direct impact on my home base and having to toggle between that triple, double consciousness, right? And so that's something that also shows up in my work. And, you know, when y'all were talking about home, it made me think of an image that Adeola offered where the people were dancing. And there's one image, I don't know if you want to turn to that, Marie. There was an image of the two people, for lack of not knowing their pronouns, we'll just say he, she, because of the optics, but we'll just say them, right? So we have a male presenting and a female presenting person. And I love that they're like head to head, and they form this bridge in this moment of joy, right? And so, yes, the one to the left, right? Look at this. It's just like a surrendering to the mind, a connection to the mind, to the body, and like the body following suit. And sometimes it's intentional and sometimes it's not intentional. You know what I'm saying? But the impact, it is beyond it's beyond what we expect, right? And so when I look at that image, that felt like home. That sense of joy, that sense of freedom, that sense of just the thing that is transcendent of the time and the space that they're in, that to me feels like home. So home can be physical, home can be abstract, home can be visceral in a completely different type of way. And I loved that Adeola offered that in our dialogue moving forward with Bridget.
Yeah, that is the work of Malik Sidibe, a Malian photographer, just to credit that properly. And it's called Nuit de Noël, which basically is in French, I guess, Christmas night or Christmas evening, but it's called Happy Club in English. I don't know who did the translation. So I'm just gonna let it go. And it's very interesting because I think this is where we talked about bridges, right? Like the work of ancestors who have passed, who we might not be related to, but on a collective level, they have influenced our work as artists. And Malik Sidibe is one of those people for me. And I think for many other visual artists, being a West African photographer that was documenting at the peak of West African liberation from French colonialism, what it looks like to be a nation that is gaining its freedom, what it looks like to be a new nation, what it looks like to have this emancipatory belief of this is home, this is now our home. That might not, and I think if you think about Mali and all other French colonies, they have very strong relation with Haiti because Haiti was that first Black nation to be like, we want independence from France. And then I realized, and I think about it a lot as an artist, that the role of the photographer, the role of the visual artist, or every artist is to document both the joys of our times, but also the struggle and what comes out of it. Sometimes the resistance is just two people dancing, and 60 years after, we feel at home watching that picture, right? Like reflecting on that image gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of home. And I wanted to ask Marie, you selected the third picture, which is a kind of a snippet of a performance. What was going on in your mind when you chose that picture? Is that something like you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'll share. Okay, so our presentation, just so you all know as you're tuning in here, is the images you're seeing. We each chose four images from the month-long residency. From all the posts that we made, we each chose 4 to share here today. And in various ways, they connect back to the themes of that I mentioned earlier.
Where we meet, circle, bridge, sharing, and gathering. Yeah, we took one picture from each theme.
Yeah. So this particular image I selected because for me, when you shared in the post and also in our conversations, a lot of like what we talked about has kind of like just run together. It's like just one ball of information in my head. But the fact that performance is something that you did, I believe you shared about this in the post actually, is like performance is something that you haven't done for a while because of the pandemic, right? But it's something that when you experienced it, you know, like that, the feeling of it, like the intensity, of what it can bring to your practice and this new kind of exploration was something that you wanted to get back into. And I really loved that this was something that you shared with us. And I think about like Tasha's work as a performance artist, because like that is kind of, as I know her, that is her jam, right? Performance is like a space she's like in. And I felt that was such a beautiful connection that you two made, just thinking and talking about performance art. And I thought like, wow, this is really beautiful. Maybe this is like, you know, this residency experience I thought was something that I hope will like, and I think it is, obviously from the post that you shared, like just refreshing that desire for you to get back into performance art. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about residencies too, is that through the artists that you come into contact with, the other people in the residency, there's influences that push your practice maybe into a new space or back into a space that you want to explore and continue to explore. So for me, that was like a really just beautiful observational moment, thinking about like, oh yes, I would love to see more performance work from Adeola. What would that look like? Because I think about how you make film and then adding that into a performance element, it will have a very unique kind of way that it's presented. So for me, it was just very inspiring as curator to think about that as a person appreciating it and viewing it, experiencing the art. True.
That makes me
very interesting because Tasha, I'll let you go, but Tasha was telling me when I posted this, it was a day where we were talking about, well, what are the bridges and stuff and things that we want to do or we want to explore. And Tasha, who is a performer, was exploring photography, and that connection was like, we switched personality for a day, and it was very interesting. And I think that's what she wants to talk about.
See the synergy that we've created. That's exactly what I was going to talk about, in that, you know, we are multifaceted, so we're multi-hyphenated, but we're also multidisciplinary artists, right? Understanding that there are a myriad of ways in which we can express the things that we hold dear and very integral to our practices. And, you know, again, like Adeola just said, when the performance came out, I'm like, look how our practices are shifting, right? You're veering into performance, and here I am veering into photography in a very intentional type of way. And so like that makes me think of the Venn diagram that I selected from the circles. And I just thought that that was a really beautiful way to illuminate the circles and like what equates to our mission, our vision, our passions, and then in the center, anchoring purpose. Like the conglomerate of all of those things together is our purpose. And what felt very clear throughout this whole month residency is that Adeola and I know our purpose, right? Marie, as a curator, knows her purpose, in which ways she wants to connect people. And, you know, Adeola knows her voice. I know our voice, even if it's expanding and growing. And that's super powerful for me. And to know that the circles are beyond just our ideologies, these are the mediums and how they come together. You know, collaboration between mediums is also very profound, right? Thinking of performance and photography inhabiting the same space. You know, multi-sensory engagement with art amplifies it in ways that some of us are not really accustomed to. And so thinking of circles in that way, and the layering of circles, the merging of circles, is also something that I think we touched on very powerfully through this month's time together.
Definitely. So this kind of takes us to our fourth section of this talk. So how it all comes together, purpose, right? We see that Malik Sidibe has made a comeback on this as well, because, you know, like Adeola was saying, his work, his images, and like Tasha was saying, they capture such like the essence of joy and freedom and being in your purpose. That's what you experience when you find yourself in that place. And it's not a feeling that maybe stays at its height every second of the day. You know, you constantly have to replenish it and keep working towards it and making sure you're maintaining it. But it's the awareness of what you're working towards that is also part of your purpose, right? Maintaining your purpose. So Tasha spoke about the middle image, you know, the trifecta or the fourfecta, where everything comes together, right? Adeola, can you talk about the selection of this image for today and what that meant to you? It definitely inspired the one I have of you. So I want to hear what yours was about first.
Okay, so I selected, which one did I selected the one with the dancing.
Yes.
Good, I remember now. I think for me, I wanted to bring in the essence of what I was feeling throughout the residency, the union of joy, the discovery of a curator and another artist that we're both kind of growing and learning from each other. And the essence of that, the joy of creating with the two of you was also limitless and couldn't be held by borders and or the internet or the time zone, because I'm in Europe, you're both in the US, and you wake up when I'm going to sleep. But for some reason, we still were able to collaborate beautifully together in the way that even I remember a WhatsApp chat where we'll be like, yay, I did the post for today and it's done, well done. And I'll be like, it's 2 midnight, it's 2 a.m. I'm sleeping, I will respond tomorrow. But even within all of that, it felt like this. It felt, I think it's part of the legacy work that we were talking about when it comes to the circles and the bridges, and also just your purpose, that this was something we wanted to do. And in that moment, that when you find not trifecta, the four connection, when they meet and you know your voice and you know why you're doing a specific work, this is the feeling you get. And I wanted to represent that as a feeling of both joy, but also liberation, but also just being able to fully explore things, even when things are difficult, in terms of like, oh, it's midnight over here, you have a long day, so you hadn't had your post, so we'll have the post tomorrow. But it still happened, and it still was joyfully expressed and joyfully created.
Beautiful. Yeah. Please, Tasha.
I was going to say, what I love about the picture that Adeola selected in this go around is the position of the person who's dancing, right? And like, we can have moments of joy and still be in the face of discomfort. Like, that position, as joyful as it is in that moment, whatever, your body's probably like, ooh, child. Ooh, the knees, that stretch. Ooh, you know, somebody gonna feel something at some point, right? So it speaks to like, even when you're having this joy, there are still growing pains, right? But I want to be clear, there were times where we did not agree, right? There were times that we were like, nah, you know, we can go this direction, we can go that direction. And I think it's important to also showcase the ways in which we have to work through to get to a point of consensus, right? We are three strong-minded, independent, thought-provoking, powerful women, right? That is one beautiful to say, that to show that we can put things together and have something fruitful come from that, but also be like, there are points where we have to concede or compromise and allow for something else to show up. And we did that with such grace. You know what I'm saying? It was like, okay, well, you know, I'm not really feeling this. So how do we get here? How do we work that out? And I think it's important to like illuminate that too. Because some people out here in these streets talking about the difference, and they make it look at all glory. No. There is a dance that we also too have to navigate in order to put forth what we did and share in the way that we shared and offer this vulnerability to a space that is not familiar to all of us collectively. So I also want to bring that up, in that your homeboy's having a good time, but the knees have been stretched. The muscles are being pulled on, okay? The bones is the work. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Someone's going to be sore tomorrow. And it's so true though, Tasha. It's like that, yeah, being uncomfortable it's a part of the process. And I do really love how we were able to work together. It's a special thing. And I think, you know, it's about being aware of like ourselves, being aware of ego, being aware of like sharing your mental space with others to go somewhere together. Like if you're able to do that, it's such a beautiful thing. It's like, yeah, we didn't always agree on everything. Sometimes we didn't even understand. Maybe I know sometimes there were things I was like, oops, I don't think I understood, you know, like what we were talking about maybe all the way. But yeah, just the way that we were able to still keep that communication open, continue forward with this goal of like, you know, working in this virtual residency space together and learning from each other and thinking about what this platform means. What does it mean to be in a virtual residency? What does that look like? How does it actually, you know, happen in a day-to-day way? You know, just discussing all these things was such an amazing experience. Like, I think the experience is still going, you know, after the residency, you're still experiencing the after effects, whether it's virtual or in person. And that kind of leads me to the last image here on this slide, the set of slides with Adeola wearing the yellow hat and the headphones outdoors in this park. This post, you must listen to it after this presentation if you have the time, folks. Everyone out there in Zoom land, tune in to it, go check it out on the IG. She broke it down in such a beautiful way, like all the different things, like when we're talking about bridges, like what is it we have to go over, right? She really got into what those elements are, and also the joy, right, that we referenced to today. The joy, the freedom that comes from living in your purpose. And this is why I selected this particular image for this slide is, you know, it's so important to recognize not only the challenges that you have to face, but then like, what happens if you just live in the freedom that you do truly have to create, to be. That is the ultimate goal, right? The purpose that keeps you going. And Tasha also said something really beautiful in our last week of gathering and sharing that theme. She said, what space have you created in an effort to share with others? So that kind of question, thinking about that question, watching Adeola's video where she delves into like the challenges, but then also the beauty of what it means to be an artist and living that practice. These are the two things that I personally I would love for everyone to take away from this residency program as you're watching today and as you're experiencing it on the Instagram. If you scroll through all the different posts, those are the things I hope everyone feels, you know, within their creative spirits, within their minds, things to think about. So Adeola, Tasha, I think we're going to take questions in a little bit, but what are the things, before we do that, what are the things that you both would like, you know, our audience to like take from this conversation and from the residency experience? Would you like to go first, Adeola?
Yeah, I was waiting for Tasha, but I'll go first. So I think for me, I would like everyone to take away personally is that we're artists and we're creative, and we don't create in a vacuum. I think that's one thing that I understand, that we're all interconnected and we all depend on each other. We cannot create in isolation. Things have been created for us before we were here, and things will continue to be created by others that will come after us. But always the legacy of being an artist is actually knowing that you create because others have created before you. And that all it takes as an artist to move forward, or sometimes unblog from a creative blog, is to look at other artists, and nothing you have done or are doing is so revolutionary that you think you're the first person to do it. Somebody somewhere else have had exactly the same idea. And the beauty of being an artist is that your idea might be the same, but they will have different output because you're a unique creator. And so also thinking from like, for me in my practice, I always think from an expansive place, that as an artist, my horizons are so open, and there is never going to be a moment where someone will do something that I want to do and it would actually have the impact that I would have if I do it, because we all are different. And the life force that we carry is so unique. It doesn't matter where in the world we are. Our art is spiritual, and it's our own mark and legacy in the world. And to think about it, that if I'm building a legacy, then I take my art more seriously, and I also take it more fun, because I want to have fun while building a legacy. I don't want to build a legacy that's built from like torture or pain. And also thinking about, we don't create as machines. We are conjurers, and when you conjure, sometimes you need the time to relax, you need the time to pause, you need the time to not do anything. But in that undoing of anything, actually you're doing a lot of things for yourself and the generations that comes after you. Wow, that was a lot.
Nah, totally fine. I mean, it's a lot, you know, it is a lot. For me, I think, you know, all the themes were profound. Again, us starting not from a space of self, but through each other. You know, the circles, we had the bridges, and we had the sharing and the gathering. I think for me, the sharing is the biggest thing that I want people to take away from the impact of the sharing and what the sharing looks like, and the reciprocity that comes from sharing, right? We didn't get to talk to it, but there is an image that y'all selected with me being fully painted, and like my braids are all flowing, whatever. And that was an experience that I had as someone who did like naked body painting. And I share that because the amount of sharing that it took to even be present in that way, like I shared my body in order to share another artist's vision, right? In a vision of another artist sharing with the community, both physically as well as virtually. Whoa, right? And so, you know, sometimes we take our sharing for granted, but the impact of just one share can have a multitude of impact. And so I think that to me is what's profound. When we share something that we've learned almost immediately and share it with somebody else, that also is the continuum that is important in the legacy work. We won't have a legacy if we don't continue to share, right? The way you brought forth your ancestors and other artists that inspired you, Adeola, that sharing inspires me to share and to research, and then I can then share. So it is, you know, it is the start of the ripples that lead the tsunami to change. And that starts with one small share. And so that's what I would love people to take home with them at the most.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for sharing, you know. Eleni, I believe, is going to lead us into the question time. If there's any questions out there, we're happy to take them. So.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I could listen to you forever. So there is a common question from Mirle. It says, this was amazing. I appreciate how you all took the time and expressed the concept of bridges with multiple paths and exchanges with others as an artist. This question is for all of you. As you are all expressing this project, what was the most impactful experience that was eye-opening and impactful for you that all wasn't aware of before? How do you use this in your future life going forward? I can write it again in the chat if you want to have a second look of the question.
Does anyone want to dive into this one? Or I can talk about it a little bit. Tasha, you look, you have something you want to?
Marie, my brain is cooking. Go ahead.
Okay. I can speak to this from the experience of like not having done a lot of residencies as a curator and as a mom who has a child in school, you know, going to residencies, getting out of the physical place where I'm at is definitely more challenging. And yeah, there tend not to be too many curatorial residencies as opposed to artist residencies. So for me, I think this experience is definitely going to open my mind to like what a residency can be. Also exciting me to apply to more residencies. Like, hey, this is such an enriching experience. Like, yeah, I get it, why people are doing this. And then really it just fortified my creative pursuit to, as we talk about freedom, as we talk about purpose, as we talk about fun, like it's, and creating that legacy. It's like, yes, like Adeola said, a legacy needs to be built on many things, including enjoyment, fun, and all the history and knowledge of people that have come before you to help support and bring you to where you're at. And I love the experience of being able to acknowledge all the different parts of me in this. Like I was thinking the other day, like, yeah, this is like a pretty long hyphenated description of me, but it's accurate, you know? I'm like, maybe I need to update my official bio, you know? But seriously, it's like the Afro, Greek, American, like all of those things are me. So it did a lot, and I'm grateful.
I think I agree with Marie that I would just say yes, that I have similar answers. So I would not want to repeat myself or repeat what Marie already said. But yes, this residency felt like, I feel like this is what is necessary to kind of just take away the borders of, if you go to a physical residency, yes, it's fun, but it's the artist between themselves and the curator. And in this instance, we get to share with a lot more people. We get to share with a community that I would like to say the ARCAthens family, and they get to share with us. There were some comments, there were people that came back to us. So it's also just the fact that there was a container of sharing, and the container of sharing of everything we are going through, everything we were sharing with each other. It wasn't just like, yes, it felt like we were talking to each other, but we were also talking to the general public. And I think for me, yeah, also acknowledging the face that we are. There's a picture that was chosen earlier at a time like this. A lot of people are not traveling anymore. And there's a very good reason for that. And create an alternative way to continue to enjoy and create art was necessary.
I like this idea of traveling even without leaving your own home. And I definitely felt that we were transported many a times. I would say for me, what I love about residencies such as this, which doesn't require the making of art. It's another way to affirm that art gets created even outside of the hand. Art is formulating in our minds, even if we haven't fully conceptualized the idea. And so seeds are being planted due to the conversations that we've had. I don't know what they might be at this moment, but I can say in my experience and my practice is that I've been able to look back and say, wow, that was the conversation that, excuse me, thank you. That was the conversation that really was like, okay, this is what sparked my brain and the wheels to start going, to then go through the process in order to manifest something else completely different. So I'm grateful for all of the seeds that were planted from our conversations, my conversations with Adeola and Marie.
This is great. If you don't have anything else to add, I'm really excited because we have a previous fellow, Leandra, and she has a question for all of you. So I will unmute her, and please, Leandra, go ahead.
Hey everyone, just wanted to first say thank you. This is like really amazing. And I'm excited to go back through all the posts and all connected on in the following in the following days. But I just wanted to just say that I've been so intrigued by the way you both expanded on the theme of bridge. I just think about how many ways we can understand how bridges exist thematically, and also just as a symbol to expand, connect, and even support ideas, thinking, but also like just the way that we exist. So I just want to thank you for that thinking. I'm going to be simmering on that for some time in contrast to what you just said. But wanted to just know if there was a way that you both can make a lot of the ideas that you spoke on throughout the fellowship of the residency. In what way would you want to see it become kind of something tangible as a collaborative effort?
Ooh,
Nice question. Settled into something.
That's a great question.
I mean, duh. I mean, if Adeola thought that we were not going to collaborate in some fashion, you're sadly mistaken. Outside of, and I'll just jump right in, outside of, again, this archive that we've created, you know, my mind has already been like ruminating on some things. And I feel like the beauty of the collaborations that I have had is that they did start organically. And, you know, I do think that Adeola and I do need to like even sit with our own offerings to see what is the strongest connection to that. So like for me offhand, a conversation around BDSM as a conduit for healing and reclamation is all in my thing, you know, as someone who's a pleasure activist who speaks to people around empowerment, who talks about kink in a way that isn't dehumanizing, that already feels like an entryway, but that's something that we obviously have to like sit down and converse with each other a whole lot more, because that is a tender and a fragile conversation, right? That has been co-opted and misconstrued for our own disadvantage. And so as two women who are embarking on that journey, we have to move with extreme intention and an acknowledgement of that. But that's my entry point, you know, but Adeola, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I think I agree. I feel like when we had that post, that was the moment for me too, because you selected that post not knowing, and what you wrote about that post, you did, because I didn't share to you what the project was about. I just put the pictures in there. I didn't even name the picture appropriately for you to get it. So I was like, wait a minute, is she reading my mind? How did she do that? What is going on? So that's definitely an entry point, but I also think that there is a lot to explore in terms of the work that we've done. We both have to sit down with our offerings, indeed, as you said, but also with Marie. I feel like there's a lot of co-creation that has sparked in this instance, in this residency, and that's also something we wanted to continue. But I think you will see more of work coming from all of us collaboratively that have happened or get birthed through the residency.
Yes, second and third to all of that, and just looking forward to bringing us together in physical platforms, virtual platforms, you know, bringing these projects, ideas to spaces to share with more and more people.
Possibly having a Afro-Greek American project at some point. I'm trying to speak Greek to Marie, but I'm gonna let her be the one to lead the way about it. And
what did I say earlier? Devoro. Milao paliligo.
Boris, so that's also something, because like somebody, I think there was a question about what is next, right? And that's a good question. And I think that for me, at least, what is next is this beauty of creating joy. Like, as someone who is Afro-Greek, it's very funny and it's very easy to talk about the struggle of being Black in Greece, but actually there's also a lot of joy. And in my work, I have kind of rerouted from that route of showing yourself, presenting yourself, making yourself visible, talking and presenting yourself. I'm like, you see me. Now I just want to show you how pleasurable and artistic and poetic, something Toni Morrison said, that all of our lives are poetic. And I want to show the poeticness of being Greek and Black that live in Greece and in Western Europe and in America, and just like connecting the Greekness, the idea of Greekness, to this expansiveness of joy, because I love being Greek. And it's just like so funny also, like all of my friends that I meet, when I meet people abroad, like, oh my God, I've never been to Greece, and my face just goes. So that expansiveness of just bringing people together and creating art that reflects that is something that is the next step for me.
And maybe I can jump in and just say that if Tasha and Adeola and Marie want to work on a future project, we would be delighted to be a part of it and support it in any way that we could. We've loved working with you and have learned so much from this experience.
Us too. It's been beautiful.
It feels like a great moment, and I don't want to interrupt it. There's a few comments on the chat if you want to have a look. I think there was one question before, or a comment from Annette, who's here, and we could unmute her if she wants. How she can join your circle, because you were speaking about circles. So I was thinking that's a great question to close the Q&A part, if anyone wants to answer this.
The question is how she can join the circle? Is that the question? Did I hear?
Yes.
Yeah, because...
Yes. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Annette, muted.
Okay. I'm in Greece. I speak Greek. I'm Dutch. I organize artist residencies. I work with women. I help them develop their artistic voice. So, I mean, there are many connections, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I thought it was really enlightening, and what a wonderful project to do a residency virtually on Instagram with. And I also, in the beginning, I was laughing because I thought, we never say this exhibition is too white, you know. I mean, it was funny to raise this question. We are just all women. And, but I realized we are now in a sort of transition between two epochs. So, yeah, and I just really enjoyed the way also the artists express themselves and their thought processes connected to their art and their choices. I really enjoyed it very much. So I was just wondering how can I join the circle, or how can I connect with you guys, with you women?
If I may, like, I would love to hear what Aristides or Lenny, you know, as Paola have to say from the ARCAthens side. I think first and foremost, you have already connected with us here in this space, so we're connected. And then, you know, just speaking more broadly, and I will let the ARCAthens fam say more, but just by participating in this, I think, and reaching out and being engaged now and then beyond this moment with us, there, you know, through virtual spaces, you know, thank God for that ability for us to now connect virtually, is, I think, one of the most effective ways to be connected across time zones, across continents and oceans. So That's what I would say. And this amazing platform of what ARCAthens is, you know, connects us all.
And I've already sent Annette my email. If she wants to have a coffee in Athens, I'd love to learn more about your activities, and we can share ideas.
That's beautiful.
That would be great.
I will be in Athens in a week. So if you want to, like, I'll be in Greece, I'll be in Ireland, but I'll be in Athens in the last week of August also. So we can connect. You have my email.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
And my Athens Greek dreams should be coming to fruition shortly. Don't know how, but we're gonna figure it out. In the meantime, you can definitely reach out to me. I'm accessible via Instagram as well as my email address. And just asking, I think another way to stay in our circles is also sharing our name with other people, right? That's how we continue to let the circles multiply and layer on top of each other. As you've heard us speaking today, I think having the wherewithal and the insight to hear how we speak and how we talk about our practice is key in also keeping our longevity as artists going, right? Because I met Marie in Martinique on a whim presenting, you know what I mean? And that opportunity created a circle, and then Marie has brought me into other circles. So it's one thing to also want to be with our circle, but also to help plant us into other circles as well.
Thank you, Tasha. I have a question for Aristides, actually. What's next for ARCAthens?
A lot. We're currently accepting applications for our spring residency in 2023. Please encourage your friends who are qualified curators and artists to apply. The applications have been designed to be free and simple in order to empower the community's participation. This is a wonderful and life-changing opportunity. Please help us spread the word. And of course, virtual residency fellows are welcome and encouraged to apply as well as an additional opportunity. We just ask that you're not based in Greece if you are an applicant. We're also planning a whole new residency to add into our umbrella of programming coming up in 2023 that I will tell you about more shortly. And the next virtual residencies are planned for June and July of 2023. We have a lot of physical programming across the continents until next summer, and then we return to the virtual residencies in June and July.
Thank you, Aristides.
Oh, can I just also say, of course, we have the fall residency coming up, where we're bringing Dr. Anita Bateman from Houston and Asaf Hindin from Tel Aviv for a 2-month residency in Athens. I should have started with that. That's coming up in a few weeks, and we're all excited to see you in Athens for that.
It has been a while. So before I thank you, I would like to ask Paola if she could put the link for the survey on the chat. It has been wonderful to have you around, and we always want to improve. So Paola will give you the link. And I usually thank everyone on the Zoom, and Paola and Stevie's, and of course the fellows, Maria, Adeola, Tasha. And ask everyone to unmute and say goodbye. But there was something that, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Preparing for like an impressive event, of course.
Before we do the hard close, I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to personally thank the fellows for their participation, devotion, seriousness, and depth with which they approached this project. It was a learning experience for me. This synopsis as well, I learned a lot that I didn't know I didn't know, for example, that Tasha knew of Adeola's work. And I just love that so, so much. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to just briefly share my excitement for Adeola's documentary, which we talked about. I'm Afro-Greek, Black Portraiture in Greece. It's not quite available on the internet yet because there's some screening arrangements that Adeola has made commitments to for the next year. But when it does get released, we will, of course, promote it because it's such a great documentary. I had the opportunity to see it and cannot wait to share it with you all. It offers a widening of the global dialogue on race, which tends to center around the US and post-colonial situations. So by offering a different context, the Greek context, and the possibility for a more complex understanding of race through the diasporic lens, I think it's a great contribution from you, Adeola. So kudos for making that. So I just wanted to sneak that in, and also before we do the hard close, I wanted to thank you, Eleni, for your facilitating of this great synopsis, all the hard work you've done to make it seem effortless and smooth, and you, Paula, for just helping throughout the residency, connecting us all and making it, again, seamless. I want to thank our board, of which we had some members here tonight, our advisory council. Thank you, Yorgo, for attending. Thank you to all our guests, and thank you for the support of ARCAthens. If you'd like to financially support us, of course, there's the support page on the website. No contribution is too small. Okay, that's my shtick. I love this, and I thank you, thank you, thank you.
I should ask Marie and Adeola and Tasha if they have any lingering questions or comments before I do my impressive exit.
Just want to say thank you for everyone joining us in this conversation. Thank you for having us in this fellowship residency.
Yes, both.
Yeah, so much thanks, gratitude, echoing Adeola's sentiments. Thank you.
And a triple ditto, plus some music in the background, saying thank you very much, gratitude.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. I want to leave you with something that Adeola said before. As he said, the joy of creating with you was limitless. And you said something like, there's no limit, there's no borders to joy, which I found it so beautiful. So I would like to ask Paula if we can unmute everyone and we can say goodbye as usual. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. This was beautiful.
Yasta, ευχαριστούμε.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ, Yasta.
Nice.
See ya.
Bye. Καλή νύχτα. Φιλάκια.
Καλή νύχτα.
Γεια, ευχαριστούμε πολύ.